Hello everyone, welcome to our August Training Tuesday event for OU Campus. Today's topic is strategies for training your editors. Training Supervisor Barbara McQuillan is here to impart all her expert wisdom on how to teach your content editors to use OU Campus and work in your website effectively, and how to manage these editors. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode as this session is being recorded. If you have a question during the presentation, please use the Q&A function. We will attempt to address all your questions during the presentation. After the formal presentation has ended, we will review and answer all remaining questions. And with that, Barbara, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Erica. Let me start by going ahead and sharing my screen here for you. Perfect. All right, hello, good morning. So the process of training your editors, it is a feat, no doubt, and it's something that oftentimes, especially here in our training team, when we're approaching a brand new implementation, there's a lot of stuff. It can be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm excited today to present to you some of the things that you can do to make your training experience easier and walk through those pieces. So our plan for today, we're going to talk just about planning and prep. So what things should you have thought through and pulled all together before any of your editors are in that session with you. We're going to talk about resources and materials that will make your training so much easier. And then we're going to talk about some post-training resources and materials that I highly recommend. So jumping right into planning and prep. If you are a brand new customer, you should not plan on training all of your editors until after all of your UAT or your user acceptance testing has been completed. The idea behind this is as you go through UAT, there may be things that need to be adjusted or changed. Maybe a parameter isn't working the way you would like it to. It's going to be moved into a component instead or something to that effect. Whatever it is that you're training your editors on, you want it to be the final version. So if you're still in that acceptance testing, there is still a possibility of changes being made. So wait until all of those changes has been taken care of and then go in and train your editors. Your goal of your training should essentially be a day in the life of your editor. So question to ask yourself is from login to log out, what is your typical editor doing? If you do have editors that are of different levels, plan that day for each and every level. So you can work on things that overlap later, but start in the mindset of each one of those different levels and walk your way through what they should be doing. I do always recommend having hands-on activity-based training. So all of your editors can get inside OU Campus, put their hands on it, and actually work through what you're discussing. But with that said, this means your training session will definitely take more time. The process to go hands-on is a better learning experience, but it does mean you're going to need to account for all of those hands on all of those keyboards. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Finally, there's so much that you can do inside OU Campus. So don't plan on showing them everything. Only include the things that are necessary for them to do their jobs. So what am I talking about here? So over here, I'm logged into my sandbox. I'm going to go ahead and open up this editable region. So there are a lot of very typical tasks that I often see editors do. Adding images, adding links, things like that should probably be included in your training session. But did you know, down here at the bottom, you can also add tables inside OU Campus. So I have an icon in my toolbar that allows me to insert a table. Maybe I want it to be 4 columns by 3 rows. There's my table. Inside this table, I can adjust the row properties. So I can make this particular row a header. So I can do a whole bunch of different things, make adjustments to the cell properties, a lot of functionality inside OU Campus. But at the end of the day, if your editors will typically not be doing tables, don't show them this. They don't need to be overwhelmed with even more information above and beyond what it is they typically need to do. So if this is not something that your editors are going to do, don't worry about it. Don't discuss it. Additionally, there are lots of different ways to do things inside OU Campus. Good example of that is inserting an image. So I have an icon in my toolbar to insert/edit image. Will get me to this box. I can also right-click and choose the second option, insert/edit image. Again, gets me to the same box. I even have an images gadget. Where'd I hide that guy? There it is. The gadget will also allow me to insert an image. Again, this could be information overload for some of your editors. So having a singular process and discussing just that in your training session will simplify all of the things that they need to do. It'll also mean that for you troubleshooting later, you know they know this one process. This is the only one that I need to troubleshoot for. Perfect. Continuing on. The next thing you're going to want to do is identify the pages and templates that you're going to want to include in training. So the question to ask yourself is, which templates or pages will your editors be editing on a regular basis? And then the next question to ask is, do you really need to show all of them? Is the editing experience pretty much the same, or is there something new on each of those pages? So for example, inside my sandbox again, I'm going to go to my page list by hovering over content and clicking on pages. I will lose my lovely table. I'm okay with that. If I hit plus new here, I want you to notice in my sandbox, I have templates for an interior page, a 1-column page, a 3-column page, a 2-column with the left, and a 2-column with the right. They are essentially all the same experience. It's just a difference of page layout and how many columns I'm seeing. So if I had editors who might be editing any of these, I wouldn't show them all 5. I'd instead probably choose this 3-column page. It has the most things on it. It allowed me to walk through all those pieces, and then I could simply explain to them all of these other templates follow the same editing experience. If you have something new, so maybe your editors are also going to be making sections. Well, now this is a different experience. There's going to be more things to fill out when they're first filling out that form field. So that would be something that I'd want to include in addition. After we figured out which pages or templates you're going to include, you next want to include which editing tasks. So there's a lot of things that you can do inside OU Campus. So things to ask yourself, here are some typical things that I often see schools are doing. Are you editing using an editable region? Are you inserting images or links? Do you have a workflow set up? So if your editors are going to be submitting for approval, they should see what that process looks like. That way they're not stuck and confused when they get to that part. Are they going to be editing navigation or props files? So oftentimes navigation or props are going to be separate files inside the section. Are you going to have those open and available to your editors, or are you going to have them separated out? Are they uploading things? Are we uploading images or files? And then finally, are we creating new content or editing page parameters? Now, some of these questions you can answer purely by the level that your editors are going to be. So creating new content is only levels 4 and above. So if all of your editors are level 3, you won't need to include that. They don't have that ability. Editing page parameters, again, level 5 or above. Uploading images and files is actually a level associated ability. So level 6 and above by default can upload images and files, but that is something that you could actually give to someone lower level. So there's not a nice clean cutoff there with level. You would have to actually check and see what permissions you've given those people. In addition to these basic editing pieces, you want to think about reusable content. So identify snippets, assets, or components that your editor is going to be using commonly. So having those particular options available and go through them in training will mean that they have the familiarity with them. Additionally, identify snippets, assets, or components that maybe are a little bit more complex, may need a little bit more explaining. I wouldn't show this as the first one though. So I would choose something a little bit more basic, maybe something they're going to use regularly like an accordion. Go through the editing experience with that. Explain to them this is the experience that you'll have when you're making edits to say other snippets. Now that we've seen that, let's talk about this particular one. The image file that you include on this particular one must be a PNG, or the video URL has to be in this format. So you can specify those more complex things after they already have a base knowledge of how that particular piece of reusable content works. Once all of these questions have been answered, your next task will be to build out a training outline. So this is just for you. This is so you have a record of all of the things you're planning on training. You can provide this to your editors so that way they have an idea of what's coming, but really it's just to keep you organized as you go through it. So I have a lovely sample here for training outline. And this just really outlines what we typically do on an on-site training. So when we come on-site to different schools and we train editors, this is a good base outline that we follow, and then you customize based upon your needs. So logging in, it's kind of small, let me zoom in here. Logging in, touring the interface, doing some basic editing inside the editable region. Anything edited in page parameters, talking about versions, and then approval processes. We will actually show the approval process if those editors are involved in a workflow. Always keep time in there for a break. It's a lot of information you're going through. They're gonna need time in order to process. So a nice opportunity in the middle, stand up, stretch, go for a walk and come back is nice. We try to keep ours at 10 or 15 minutes, so that way we don't kind of meander around forever. But it is a nice time to be able to kind of clear your head as you go through it. Afterwards, we come back in and we will actually log in as the approver. So oftentimes when we have schools who have their editors set up in this workflow, their editors submit the page, but then it kind of goes into the ether. They don't really understand what happens next. So we like to show that process of what the approver sees, just so they have an understanding of what happens next. And additionally, should they ever become editors in the future, they've seen this process before. Then we start to get into things that are a little bit more complicated. So we leave the singular page. We'll create new pages based upon the templates that should be included. We'll talk about making edits to navigation, again, assuming your editors are doing it, creating new sections, uploading files, and then other miscellaneous things. So props, files, things like that. So this is the outline that we would have next to ourselves up at the podium when we're actually doing the training. After you have your outline, do a run through of all those training tasks. So actually set yourself up with a page and do all of those pieces. It'll give you an idea of how long it will take. It'll make sure that you're comfortable going through all those pieces. Once you have it timed, multiply that time by 1.5 or 2 times. That's how much time it'll take you to actually do it in front of a live audience. It's going to account for all of the hands-on activities. It'll account for the extra time you'll need to explain it. It'll account for extra time so you can do it a little bit slower. So that way everyone is able to follow. And it'll give you some extra time for Q&A at the end. After that, now you know how long your session should be. Now you can start scheduling them. If you have editors of different levels, I'm going to recommend grouping similar levels into a singular session and then separating them out. So if you have a bunch of level 3s and a bunch of level 6s, have all your level 3s in one session, have all your level 6s in a separate section. Now, sometimes that's not really feasible. It may be based upon how many people you're training. It may be based upon simply time constraints. So in the event that you do need to mix different levels, I recommend doing your overlapping tasks at the beginning. So all of your basic editing processes at the beginning. And then once all those processes are done, you can then dismiss the lower level editors and keep the higher level editors to continue on with the more advanced tasks. Still prepping, still planning. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have OU Campus users created for all of your editors ahead of time. So don't wait until people wander in the door to then create them as users. It's gonna suck up a lot of time. Have them pre-created so you have that set up already. I'm also gonna recommend, depending upon your setup, to have a couple extra users just in case. So if you're using a single sign-on like CAS or Shibboleth, that might be a little bit more complicated. But if you're using just the regular OU Campus login, having 2 or 3 kind of fake users will allow you to just kind of hand out, here's a username and password, you're using it for today, and then be sure to delete those users out after your training session. That way you don't have to troubleshoot, this person can't get logged in, that person doesn't have a user yet, no problem, here. Log in like this. That way they get the experience and you don't suck up all that time trying to take care of getting them set up. After you have all your users, you're going to want to set access restrictions as appropriate. Now, there are a couple of different restriction levels I'm going to recommend, but depending upon whether you're an existing customer or a new customer, you may want to do one or the other of these. So site access, section access are really great in order for you to restrict where all these brand new people are able to go inside your site. let me show you. Back to my OU Campus tab. I'm going to cancel out of here. From the root of my site, I have a lot of sections in here, a lot of files, a lot of folders that I don't necessarily want someone who's brand new to get into, especially if you already have content that's in here that's already starting to be built out. You don't want them accidentally breaking things. So locking everything down is a good idea before they get in there. So to lock down my entire site, I'm going to hover over Setup, go to Sites. I'm going to hover over the site, hover over Edit, and choose the second option of Site Access. Recursive modification is going to take the changes or the options that I'm going to select here and push them down into every child file and every child folder here. This is super powerful. It means I can set a whole bunch of settings all in one big sweep. But the thing to remember on this is there is no undo with access settings. So as I'm getting things set up here, if I already had a bunch of things set up and I set it recursively from here, I'm going to wipe out all those changes and I will need to manually go back and change them back again. So if you are an existing customer and you already have your website up and running and you're just maybe pulling in a whole new group of student workers, I would not recommend doing any of your access settings here because you'll wipe out what you already had set up. If you're a brand new customer, you have nothing set up yet, you just want to lock everything down and then you'll go through and adjust it later, this is a good step for you. So what I will do here is I'll choose the second option, which will apply my settings to all files and folders inside the site. Pushes this straight down, and I'll change my access group to administrators only. This will mean that all of my lower level editors will not be able to open up any of those other files or folders. I will manually choose one by one where I'm going to allow you to be. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Perfect. So now I have all of those pieces locked down. Hovering over content and going to pages. So all of this at that point would be locked down for my editors. Now, after this point, or if you're an existing customer, this is where I'd recommend you pick up. I'm going to hover over, say, the training section, hover over edit and go to the access for the particular section. This is where I want to make some changes. Excuse me. All right, so again, I would apply this to all files and folders inside this training section only. And this I would change to the access group. So if you had a particular group of people, say that new group of student workers, you could set them up as their own group and assign it here. If everything's brand new because you are a brand new customer, I would recommend just setting it to everyone. That way everybody can get into this training section. This is your playground. This is where you're allowed to be. Touch nothing else, but you can play here. I'll go ahead and hit save. Perfect. So having those access settings set before your editors get inside OU Campus means that you're locking it down, you're keeping everything else protected until they're up and trained and they're comfortable with what they're doing. So you know that they aren't accidentally hurting or breaking things. The last thing I'm going to recommend when we're talking about your editors is have your editors log in before the training session. So get their users up inside OU Campus, get the access set up, and then provide them with all of their login credentials. I've had some sessions where we have spent the first 20 or 30 minutes getting people logged in because they hadn't logged in yet. I don't remember what my password is. It was emailed to me. The characters aren't matching. This whole process, if you have them before you come into that training session actually log in, it means that it's a smoother transition to go. All right, so that's a lot of planning, a lot of prep, but one of the great things about doing all that planning and prep is means that your actual training session will go so much smoother. So all of that's done. Now let's talk about resources and things that you're going to want to have for the actual training itself. And the first thing I'm going to recommend is prepping a training environment. I recommend creating a separate section in your site specifically for training. So you'll notice inside my sandbox, I do have this section here called _training. So you're going to notice that little underscore underneath, all it really does is it kicks to the top of my alphabetical list here. I like using the underscore because it means that it's going to be right up at the top and nice and easy for people to find, especially when you're first starting training. So I do recommend using the underscore for it. It doesn't do anything other than that. There's nothing else special about it. It just kicks it to the top of the list. Once I have a section set up, you're going to want to create training pages. You're going to want to have training text on that page, and you're going to want each editor to have their own page. And then again, I recommend create a couple extra just in case. You never know if you're going to have someone randomly drop in when you weren't planning on having 21, you only created 20 pages. Have an extra couple. So I usually recommend an additional 10% based upon the number of people who have registered to come. That should give you some nice cushioning there. So again, back inside my sandbox. Inside this training section, I've created this interior page. And opening up that page, I've gone ahead and put in some starter content. It's really just kind of a guide. It'll guide the editors as they're going through the process. It helps guide me to make sure that I'm not forgetting things that I'm planning on including. So I'm going to have some starter content. I'm planning on adding an image. I'll add some links, and then I'm going to put in an accordion and add that information about my program inside of it. So just some cute little filler text, just that way I have something to start with. Oftentimes on my pages, if I create a new page, my editable region is blank or empty, it can be a little overwhelming. You don't really have anywhere to kind of dig your teeth into yet. So having this filler content is helpful. So we create the page, we've added the filler content, not too bad, not too stressful, but now we need one for every single person who's coming to training. So now you may start getting overwhelmed. Hold on a second. I need to hit plus new, recreate each one of these and put my training content into it every single time. Let me show you a shortcut. Hovering over content, we're going to go back to pages. I've created this page. It has all of my filler content in it already. I'm going to hover over this file, over file, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to copy it directly into that same underscore training section, and you're going to notice my copy gets a -1 appended to it. Going back to the original file, I'm going to copy it again. Now I have a -2. And I'm just going to keep doing that over and over until I have enough of those files to cover the number of people who are coming to that session, plus a few extra, about 10%. So now I've created 4 additional pages here. If I open up this -4 page, all that starter content's already here. So I don't need to rebuild it over and over and over again. I have it all set up here. So there's a nice little helpful trick. But again, you may say, well, this is still going to be overwhelming. We have 200 people coming to training. Hitting this button 200 times, that's going to be a little bit much. So let me show you a trick for that as well. Hovering over content back to pages. Oop, I'm already here. Clicking on the root of my site by clicking on that house. Notice I've created a second section here called training multiple sessions. So if you're going to be training that many people, chances are you're not going to have them all in one room at the same time. I really don't recommend doing a hands-on activity-based training with 200 people at the same time. That might be a little bit overwhelming. We try to restrict our hands-on trainings to 20, maybe 30, and at that point it gets a little bit more exciting than you would probably want. But if I'm going to do this with multiple sessions, let's open up this section here. You'll notice I've created a folder called Session 1. And in here, I created my original page that had the training content on it, and I copied it for the number of people who are going to be in just this session. Back up 1 level, I can take this entire section and copy it. So hovering over File, I'll go ahead and copy it. Again, I want to copy it into that same underscore training multiple sessions section. So now I have Session 1-1. Hovering over File, I'm going to rename it. This is now Session 2. So I don't need to create 200 individual pages. I could create 20 and copy the folder 10 times. So a little bit easier process. Plus it keeps everything nice and segmented. So that way you don't have to worry about all of these pieces all over the place. All right. So I've gone ahead and created all of those pages for my training people. The next thing I want to have pre-set up are my images and documents folders. I'm going to want to have my sample images or documents uploaded. And you probably want to have your default images folder directory variable set up as well. So back inside my sandbox, back to the root of my site, let's deal with this underscore training section again. Depending upon how your information architecture is set up, you may have a single folder maybe at the root of your site that hosts all of your images. Or you may have an images folder inside every section and all of the pages in that section only use that images folder. Whichever way your future site or your current site is set up, I recommend mirroring it here during training. That way your editors will already have this experience. So if I have an images folder in every one of my sections, I would simply create it here by hitting plus new. I'll create my new folder. I'll call it images. Perfect. So now I have my folder set up. I would preload images in here. Even if you're planning on having your editors upload as part of the training, they're probably going to want images in here already to see how images are going to be added into a page or inserted into a page. So having some images already set up here will be very helpful. So desktop. I have some cute little sample images here. Let me go ahead and just grab a handful of these. We'll drop them in. Perfect. So now I have some images set up here ready to go. When my editors go to insert an image on a page, so let's open up my interior page here. Let's open up my main content region. Maybe the process I'm going to show to my editors in order to insert an image is to use the icon in the toolbar. So I'll click there. I'll go searching for my image. Now, the location that you are dropped off at can be set. So everyone on this page, when they go to insert an image, are dropped off in the same location. I do recommend that for training. That way you don't have people trying to navigate around the folder structure before they're really ready to tackle folder structure yet. It keeps everybody in one place. Everything is nicely organized and kind of handed to your editors. So let's talk about how to set that. Cancel, cancel. Back to my pages view by hovering over content, clicking on pages. Back to the root of my site by clicking on little house. I'm going to hover over training, hover over edit, and go to access. Down at the bottom of this access settings, I have directory variables. And the directory variable that specifies where I should get dropped off when I set up or go to insert an image is this default image folder. Notice it's being inherited right now from my site settings. I can override it here. So plus add, I'm going to choose my default image folder. And I'm going to set direct you to /training/images. Save. So now inside this section, we'll open that page again. We'll open that editable region again. When I go to insert an image and I browse, I'm automatically dropped off at that location. So I can pick through those images that you have pre-set up, keep everybody contained inside the same environment. Perfect. Once I have all of these pieces created, I need to publish the entire section. So I want to make sure all resources available on my production server. I want to make sure all of my pages are published out. So rather than publishing individual pieces as I go across, do it all at once at the end by publishing out the whole section. So again, back to my sandbox, back to content pages, and back to the root of my site. I'm going to select that entire section and I'll choose publish. Now, I've been kind of bopping into and out of these different images, these different page files, so I may have things that are checked out to me right now. By default, when I go to do a publish for multiple files like this, the system will not automatically push out anything that is checked out. It's a safety measure to make sure I don't accidentally publish something that I didn't realize was checked out or didn't realize was included in this grouping. In order to make sure everything just pushes out, I'm going to choose this top option, include checked out files. I do always recommend using version descriptions. Version descriptions will give you that little description in the list So if you have lots of changes on this particular page, you'll be able to see how this particular one changed. I'm just going to say created new for training here and hit publish. So now all of the image files, all of the pages, everything gets published out in one big sweep. After everything's been published, my next question is, do I need a template group? So again, part of this training is to present your editors with what they need and nothing more, so they don't get overwhelmed by it. Template groups can be really helpful in that. Back to OU Campus, back inside this training section. So if my editors are creating something new, so if they're level 4 and above, when they hit plus new, they're going to see all of the templates that are available here. This may be too much. Maybe my plan was only to show the 3-column and the new section, and that's it. I don't need all of this extra stuff here. Well, in that case, I could create a template group. Clicking cancel, hovering over setup, I'm going to go to templates. Let me mention the setup menu is only available if you're level 10. So if you are setting up training and you are not a level 10, you'll need to ask one of your level 10 administrators to set up this template group for you. Inside templates, I'll see all of the template options that are available. And on the left-hand side, I have an option for template groups. I'm going to create a new group here by hitting plus new in the upper right corner. And I'm going to call this training. I only need 2 here. That's all that I'm doing for training. My new section and my 3-column. That's it. Bottom right-hand corner, create. To set that template group on my section, hovering over content, back to pages, back to the root of my site by clicking on the house. I'm going to hover over the training section, hover over edit, and click access. If I set this up with the multiple sections inside, I have to choose this second option to make sure it gets pushed down into all files and folders inside here. From template group, I'm going to choose my training group. Bottom right-hand corner, save. So now back inside underscore training, when I hit plus new, 2 options, that's it. Keeps it from getting overwhelming. Make sure that everybody is on the same page for it. Perfect. So all of those pieces are set up. The next thing you should do is create a training user. So if you are an admin or you are higher level and you are about to do a training for a bunch of level 3 users, create yourself a level 3 user so you can walk through the experience together. What's the benefit of doing it this way? Well, notice me as my level 10, I have a setup menu. I have a lot more options in my content menu and multiple options in addition in my reports menu. When I'm on a page itself, I have source code access. I see my parameters. There are a lot of things that I see here because I'm this higher level that your lower levels won't see. So if you log in and do your training as a level on the same plane, they'll see what you are seeing. It'll make sure that everyone has the same experience. After you create that training user, one more time, do a run through of your training tasks. This is going to make sure that all of the access settings that you had pre-configured are working appropriately for those user levels. This will make sure that you don't get caught during that training session. Because remember, as a level 10, I have power over everything. I can go everywhere. But if I do a test run as my level 3, that's when I'm going to realize, oh, I don't have access to any of those images. That's awkward. Let me go fix it before I actually have people in front of me. As I'm about to start doing my training, I do recommend having some sort of a training deck. So some sort of presentation to start off with. I like having a title slide with my big smiling face on it. It just gives everyone kind of that understanding they're in the correct room, this is the training we're about to do, and it walks through kind of some basic information. Now, you don't want your training deck to be too long. You'll overwhelm people with information. They won't get directly into the hands-on. They'll start getting bored. People start taking naps. It gets awkward. So inside the training deck, I recommend if you're a new customer, highlight some of the things that have changed from your old CMS to OU Campus. So these can be things that people are typically used to. So that way they start to understand that there are going to be differences in this editing process. And hopefully these are all editing changes that will make their lives easier, that they will enjoy more. You can highlight some of the things that were really tough in the old one and talk about how nice and easy it is now inside OU Campus. Get everybody kind of bought into this new process. Some nice things that I like to highlight have to do with the check-in, check-out system and the direct edit link. These are unique inside OU Campus. They're things that make the editing experience easier, and they're things that I like to highlight. After you're done talking about all the things you're planning on talking about, provide the URL to the training page that each one of those people is about to log in. Remember, OU Campus has a check-in, check-out system. Only one person can be editing a page at a time. So if I give everyone the URL to the example page I will be using during training, now I'm fighting with everyone in my room over that page. So what I need to do is provide every person with the URL to their own page. And this is how I like to do it. I'll provide my URL, but notice all the way at the end, I've added a little number symbol. Remember when we copied the page, it added a -1, -2, -3. I can have that number symbol essentially be different from each person. So I'll tell everyone in the room, put in this URL, when you get to that number symbol, put in your number. That way everybody's landing on their own page, but it has the identical view and appearance. So you can follow along with me, but we're not fighting over the same page. Here's some bonus training tips for you when you're actually doing your presentation. Assign numbers to your computer stations. So if you're going to be doing your training in an actual computer room, take a bunch of Post-its, stick numbers on each one of those computers. That way, when you tell people use your number, you can say, use the number that's on your Post-it. Have everyone log in using the same browser. Remember, OU Campus does work in any browser. But if you're up there doing the training and people are in 4 or 5 different browsers, you're now troubleshooting in 4 or 5 different browsers. So to make your life easier, if you have everyone say open up in Chrome or open up in Safari, that way you know all of the button clicks, you know when you go to save an image, it says save image as versus save picture as. You're using the same nomenclature across the whole board. Have a knowledgeable helper. If at all possible, having someone to kind of run around the room and answer little questions here and there will help keep things moving along. It'll make sure that everyone is able to keep up to speed. As we mentioned before, log in as that training user. Make sure it's the same level as the people that you're currently training. Zoom in on your screen. This is one of those things that often catches people. I am currently logged in on my screen and zoomed in. If I zoom out to regular view, it does become kind of small. I end up with a bunch of white space on either side of my OU Campus. So if you're projecting this on a very large screen, it may not be too bad, but still zooming in allows everyone to see it a little bit better. I like to zoom into at least 125, sometimes 150, depending upon how big the room is that I'm going to be presenting to. Limit navigation between different tabs. So oftentimes, especially if you're a veteran OU Campus user, I'll open up maybe my pages in another tab because I want to get to a different page so I can compare them back and forth. And ooh, I realize there's an asset on this page. I can open up my asset manager in another tab here. So now we open up our asset. And remember, the asset has to go onto the page over here, but this is parameters. So we're going to go back to edit here. But remember, this is the page you're talking about. And now people are lost. When you're flipping between different tabs, it gets difficult to figure out where you were because you didn't go through that navigation path. So if at all possible, limit the number of tabs you have open and actually walk people through it on the same screen. Hovering over content, we'll go to assets, we'll open up the asset, we'll make the changes we need. Hovering over content, back to pages. That way people are following that navigation path. Talk through every mouse over and every click. Again, inside OU Campus, there's a lot of stuff you can be doing. So I want you to notice anytime we've gone back to this pages view, I hover over content, click on, why do you keep saying assets? Hover over content, click on pages. I'm going to click on the root of my site by clicking on that little house. I'm going to hover over training, hover over edit, and go to access. That way, people who are in your training session who maybe are transfixed on their screen weren't looking up at your screen to see what you clicked, but they can hear the audio. So you have that kind of reinforcement of information being presented in multiple ways. Finally, if you're going to be doing any training that includes source code, increase the size of the source code. I'm not talking about zooming in the screen. I'm talking about the source code editor itself. So let's go ahead back inside training, and we'll open up that interior page again. And maybe for this particular set of people I'm training, we will be doing things in source. So we open up the source code. So I'm zoomed in pretty well here, but this may still be a little bit too small for my editors. So I can increase the font size in the editor itself to make it a little bit larger. I often also find that having a white, that's not very pretty. So a white background sometimes projects a little bit nicer than a dark background, but that you should test inside the room that you're in to make sure that the presentation is visible and clear even at the back of the room. All right, your training has been completed. Excellent job. Wonderful. Now you're going to want to have some post-training resources. So I recommend creating an editing guide. The idea of this guide here is to have step-by-step instructions for all of the tasks that you review during training. You're going to go over a lot of stuff, and it's going to be a lot. Even though people have hands-on gone through it, they may need refreshers later on. So having that guide is super helpful. I do highly recommend including screenshots from inside your OU Campus instance, so that way you can have the exact view that they're going to see. Finally, I recommend uploading the guide into OU Campus, publishing it, and setting it as an add-on. And I'll make it accessible inside OU Campus. So inside my sandbox, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Hovering over content, going to pages. From the root of my site, I have created a couple of guides, and I've placed them inside _ resources. Inside a folder I'm calling guides. So here's my editing guide here. I've uploaded it as a PDF. And inside OU Campus, I'm in Chrome, so I am able to view this binary file here. It's just my editing guide. Table of contents at the front, and then it walks through step by step, how do I do these things? Logging in, my big red arrows to point to things on the screen, just makes it nice and easy for people to be able to see and follow along with all the things that you've already talked about. So once I have this uploaded, I am going to publish it out. So I uploaded for training. And what I'm going to want to do is view it in a new window because I'm going to want to grab that URL. I'll use this to create an add-on. Back inside OU Campus, by clicking on that previous tab, what is an add-on? An add-on is a universal bookmark. Right here, hovering over add-ons, I'll be able to see the add-ons that I've created here. Oh, excuse me. So to create that add-on, hovering over setup, I'm going to go to account. And then I can scroll down, or you'll notice on the left-hand side, I have this add-on, so I can just click on it. It'll bring me right here. Clicking on plus add, I can give it a name. So this is my editing guide. I'm going to paste in that URL that I picked up before. Add-ons can be set for administrator access, but I'm not going to choose it for this one, just because I want to make sure that this is going to be accessible to all of my editors, all of those people who are those lower levels. I am, though, going to choose this open in a new window. Having this set up to open in a new window means that I can have my OU Campus open and have the instructions somewhere separate. So I'll choose that and hit save. So now that I've done that, hovering over add-ons, there's my editing guide. So it'll open a new tab. And there was a suggestion for when you're creating your PDFs to create this table of contents clickable. That's actually an excellent idea. That way I don't have to navigate down to page 24. This could be a clickable link and just drop me to the place that I want. Thank you very much for that suggestion. In addition to having an editing guide, I do recommend having a style guide as well. Style guides can give things like instructions on how your pages should be built. So what is the purpose of specific snippets as part of the original design, and when should those be used? Guidelines on writing for the web. So including things in here like accessibility constraints. So oftentimes your editors may not have a good understanding of what accessibility requirements are. So having your headers nested in the right orders, starting with an H1, followed by an H2, followed by an H3. Having things like that in a style guide can be very helpful in making sure that you're not chasing after accessibility issues later on. Additionally, having branding specifics. So what font family is your design using? What colors should your editors be using? What logos are you using? Inside of my sandbox, hovering over content, back to pages. Still inside underscore resources and still inside guides, we have a style guide here at Omni Update for our training materials. So for our support documentation, for anything like that, we have our own style guide here. So in here, we have specifications on who our audience is, what sentence structure you should be using, things like this, whether or not you should be using contractions or not, grammar and punctuation, just to make sure that the voice sounds right across your entire site. We do appreciate using the Oxford comma. So having both of those set up inside OU Campus, published out, set them as add-ons. It means that your editors will always be able to find them. So here's some bonus post-training tips for you. After your training is done, leave the training section live for a little while. This way your editors have an environment to test out their skills, try things out. That way they're not testing out things on your live pages. Have your editors start using OU Campus immediately or as soon as possible after training has ended. That way all those new skills that they just developed won't get stale. So if you're about to introduce OU Campus, say at the beginning of December, and you know everyone's about to go on break, maybe pushing it until after break is over. That way you do the training and they're right back inside OU Campus. Finally, scheduling working sessions. So your editors can come to a space where you will be located for a certain amount of time, so that way they can work on their pages. They know they have access to you. This is actually super helpful if you are a new customer and if you're having a bunch of people help with migrating content. That way you know that there's going to be a set time where they can be working on it, and they know that they have access to you in case they have any questions. All right, that wraps up all of our points on getting strategies for training your editors. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and add them into the Q&A panel. But as you're doing that, let me let you guys know, next month's Training Tuesday, it's going to be held on September 24th. And actually, this last bit that we were just talking about, creating your editing guide, creating your style guide, if you need some more information about creating documentation like that, this Training Tuesday is going to be all about supporting your editors with documentation. So it'll be able to walk through those processes with you. So that will be an excellent option as a follow-up Training Tuesday for you. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Guys, there is one question, but somebody gives a thumbs up on the Oxford comma. I appreciate the Oxford comma too. Someone just asked if we could share our sample training outline, and yes, we are going to be uploading supporting documents, and they'll be available with this video on the support site. So you'll be able to see some sample PDFs and things that you could, use as reference for your own training. Okay, so if it doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in, so like Barbara said, oh, wait, no, another one just came in. Someone asks, how do you feel about online training through Blackboard?
I like using training sessions. You get into that whole, it depends upon the audience kind of thing. So you're going to have some people who are going to be editors who will do a self-paced course. They'll go through it appropriately by themselves and they'll actually learn from it. You're going to have the other group of your population who will open it up because they were told they had to use it, click through the things, advance through the videos just to get to the end so they can click next, guess on all the multiple choice questions, and then call it done. So it depends upon your audience. If you have an audience who'd be able to follow through and you have time constraints, maybe you can't get everyone together in order to sit in for a session, something online absolutely can work. With that said though, having a set time, everyone's coming during these hours, we are going to go through this information together, you know that they're going to actually be taking in that information. Looks like we do have another question here. I'd like a training session on creating and editing help website with pages that renders PDFs as well. Is that possible? So rendering things as PDF includes actually a little bit more advanced coding that uses XSLFO. I believe we do have some resources available about that, but it's a great idea for an additional Training Tuesday. So we will take that into our list of ideas and we'll see if we can find any additional resources that we can send directly to you about that.
Yeah, we've done for the training conference, we've had previous sessions about creating, about setting up the code that takes the page content and puts it into a PDF format. Generally, it's pretty, like, it is a pretty developer heavy topic. If you're interested in taking a stab at it yourself, if you go to our professional or our public GitHub, which I believe is,
I think it's just GitHub/OmniUpdate.
Yeah, I believe it's github.com/OmniUpdate. We do have, you can download example code for a single PDF output and maybe use that and test it out and see if PDF output is something you kind of want to tackle on your own. But in general, it is a pretty developer heavy topic that takes a lot of explanation. So a trimmed down version might be applicable for a session like this, but in general, it's something that requires more time and a little more hands-on than we're capable of over this webcast format. But like I said, there might be applications for Training Tuesday webcast, so we'll definitely look at that and see if we can see if it has a place in our roster of topics.
It looks like we have one more comment here. One of our schools encourages their users to view the introductory video prior to the sessions. So we do offer a monthly orientation. It's offered every month, and we also have a previously recorded session on our Vimeo and our YouTube. So that's an excellent idea. Have your editors watch that ahead of time. It will give them an overview in a sandbox environment like what I was showing today of how a lot of those basic editing processes work. And that way you can just focus during your training session on exactly what is unique about your particular implementation. Great idea. Any other thoughts or questions?
All right, well, while we wrap things up, like I said, this video and any other resources that will be posted online. As always, make sure to check out the OCN or the support site for these resources and for details on our upcoming Training Tuesday. And like I said, we had the question suggesting a topic for Training Tuesday. When you sign out of the webcast, when you leave the webcast, you'll see a feedback survey for Training Tuesday. This is the perfect place to provide your feedback on new topics or anything else that you want to see in Training Tuesday. So absolutely fill out that survey. We love hearing from you guys, and it really helps us make these webcasts more tailored to you. One question sneaking in under the gate. The orientation I went through seemed higher level. Do you plan on doing training for low level users?
So the orientation that I believe you're talking about is like your new customer training. So that is 10 hours of training that is geared towards your administrators. The monthly orientation is a webcast just like this Training Tuesday that is open to anyone at any one of our customer schools. And it is designed for lower level users, specifically focusing on editing processes. All right.
Okay, all right. And with that, we will wrap things up. Thank you everybody very much for attending and have a great rest of your day.